Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Marketplace. Today is going to be a special edition because the head of Joy Business, Odile Ntiamwa, has been speaking to accountant and management practice Dr. Noel Tagoe, who says that Ghana needs its banking sector to team up with other countries to fully benefit from the Continental Free Trade Agreement area. Odile Ntiamwa engaged Dr. Tagoe, who projects Ghana will become a subsidiary hub for many multinationals around the globe. Of course, we shall be going for a break. When we return, the full interview plays. Do stay.
The free trade area has actually become one of the key things that going forward, especially after COVID-19, that Africa will need to really concentrate on to bring volumes and for example, also affect the area of employment. I have come to have a discussion with a former Oxford professor. He's currently with Nottingham University. He was also the director for research with SEMA as well. He's Noel Tagoe, and we're actually going to be drilling down on some key issues relating to continental free trade, issues relating to infrastructure, issues relating to whether our starting point of trading goods and of course services is actually a good starting point for the continental free trade area. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So the first question I want to find out from you is that when you take a look at the European Union zone, the key things they concentrated their energies on at the beginning was to systematically have laws that actually cut across as key starting point. Ours has been a focus on policy, so that the policy direction is that, well, now we can trade in goods for free and also issues relating to services. Did we start at a good point?
Thank you very much. I think we started at a very good point because the law must be based on policy. So the law the policy state what the objectives are, and the laws then should bring the objectives into being. So each country then would have to put in laws that is aligned to the policy at the continental level. And there are dispute resolution mechanisms that have been put in place at the continental level, and that should help them to deal with it. I think Africa has had some experience in these things because we've had regional economic communities such as ECOWAS, COMESA, and other places like that. So we are not coming to this entirely new. We are coming with some amount of experience in that place.
So my issue really with the continent has been the fact that we have released or removed the policy barrier. But infrastructure is a key thing. Yeah. Transportation is another big barrier. Finance is a key thing that we need to be working at. We currently use China a lot in infrastructure, for example, in roads. In 2017 alone, China did 8.7 billion worth of roads for us in about 5 African countries. How do we push forward, especially after COVID-19, our infrastructural gap to be able to take advantage of after?
Okay, so there's two things with infrastructure. The infrastructure that makes trade possible, and then the financing of the infrastructure. I think China has come in mostly in the financing of the infrastructure and use that to construct the infrastructure themselves. So I'll park that for a moment and look at the kind of infrastructure that we need. So part of the reason why we had the free trade area is to promote trade within Africa. So we import from Africa, we export into Africa, and there is economic relationship there. You cannot import and export without transportation infrastructure. So for those of us who are at the coast, we need very good ports to be able to handle those ones. So ensuring that ports work very well are important. And then for those who are inland, we need freight, other means of carrying freight, such as rail infrastructure and road infrastructure and other things like that. Those are pretty costly. In fact, indeed, even air infrastructure. So we have the common air agreement over Africa. We've got to make sure that we have those right. I don't think that is the major problem in terms of thinking about what road networks we need, what it's going to do to the cost profile of exports and imports, what kind of rail infrastructure we need, what kind of port infrastructure we need. I think the conceptualization of that is the easier bit. The thing we've then got to do is understand what the knock-on effects in the economy would be, and then be able to use that to compare how much it costs us to be able to do that. Ghana is in a more fortunate position than most other people. So we should be able to use our ports to trade very well. And then in Africa, kind of in the West African region, the landlocked countries, we should be able to connect through rail systems. But when you are connecting through rail and road, you're also dependent, even in terms of port, you're also dependent on other countries developing their infrastructure.
Yes.
You know, so say you're going to trade with a landlocked country in Central Africa. You might want to get stuff to Libreville in Gabon, for example. But now you are dependent upon Gabon moving things forward from that end in order to facilitate that. I think the only one that, if you like, enables us to overcome is the air cargo stuff. But air cargo is quite expensive.
It's expensive.
Not as cheap as rail, which is one of the cheapest we could have. So that calls not only for national infrastructure development, but for a Pan-African infrastructure development. And that is key for us, a Pan-African infrastructure development with that. So we have to be coordinating infrastructure development. It's like technology. When you have technology and you're working with partners in terms of technology, you normally have a technology roadmap where you're informing people of what you need and so on.
But this is the case where a lot of African countries do not own their own infrastructural development and keenly depend on other countries for this. How do we own our own infrastructure and therefore own this whole continental free trade area? Because sometimes I worry a bit that we may end up rather populating our various countries with people who will come and do the industrialization from other continents, and of course, people who will come and take over the infrastructure.
And so I think the issue has more to do with the financing bit of it. Yes. Africa has tried at various points to have an Pan-African Infrastructure Development Funds, whether they were funded locally in Africa, particularly through the African Development Bank, or through other multilateral agencies. But there has to be a way in which African governments would raise funds to be able to build in terms of infrastructure. China has been one that has been assisting, in quotes, Africa to do that. I don't think that is the right way to go. There has to be a mixture of the financing of infrastructure. And we could, there are a variety of means by which we can construct, let's say, in individual countries, financial vehicles to raise funds to do that. The commercial sector is another way to go. There's been a new thinking about Africa being able to borrow on favorable terms from the commercial sector. Work being done by Vera Songwe, the new executive director or executive secretary for the Economic Commission for Africa. Her suggestions are quite problematic, and there's a lot of debate going through in there. But through those debates, we'll find a way of funding in there. But I think the key policy objective should not be to mortgage our infrastructure to any other country, because we lose sovereignty there. Having said that, then we come to the use of that infrastructure in trade. And the laws, etc., that we have. should facilitate the use of that infrastructure. But I come back to the whole issue that no one country would be able to overcome the infrastructure deficit and also what infrastructure needs to do, because if Ghana is exporting into Niger, for example, it might have to pass through Burkina Faso. Now, we are in control of our infrastructure development up to the border with Burkina Faso. And then Burkina Faso takes over. That is currently what most people do. What I'm suggesting is that countries come together and develop the infrastructure together. So you're creating an African highway, for example, an African rail network, which is trade-based. You can see an example in what China is now seeking to do in the Silk Road Initiative. So China is picking up, different countries right from China through to Russia, through to most of Asian countries, coming to the very doorsteps of Asia, of Europe, and they're investing trillions into that.
Key thing in Ghana currently, our debt status is virtually overwhelming for us to even deal with issues relating to our own budgets, our own activities. How can government surmount this and begin to even think of the continental free trade as a real opportunity and to look at investment with 1.3 billion people in mind?
So I think the debt situation should come down to some extent, to what extent is a matter of policy choices and astute economic management. But our current debt situation really has a lot of COVID written all over it. Every country has gone through that. The extent to which it is COVID related, it's been politicized. But then again, politicians know how to politicize, even whether you eat kinky in the morning or not. But having come to that, all over the world, I mean, our tax base is too low. It's just that. Look, and Ghanaians must realize that government raises money from only a few things. One is you tax, two is you borrow, three is you get grants from people. When you're getting grants, you're ceding part of your sovereignty.
Yeah.
And four is when you are getting dividends from areas that you've invested in yourself. So you cannot continue to borrow all the time if you don't have a means of repaying them and servicing the loan. You cannot continue to rely on the good nature of development partners to give you grants. And so it's either you have businesses, which we don't have. I don't think the state-owned enterprises contrite a lot to the national
to change anything. Yeah.
So taxation becomes a key area. There are a couple of things to note about taxation. Number one is that we have to widen the base. And widening the base is in both the formal sector and the informal sector. We don't seem to have much data on the informal sector. But if we manage to bring data in the informal sector, then we are beginning the journey to widening the base. And you don't only need data, you need good analysis of the data to get insights into how much they are performing and so on and so forth. And then you need to be able to collect taxes from them in a manner that does not impose upon them. So someone who is in the informal sector doesn't have the time to go and write all manner of things. So daily tax rates, for example, are important and manageable. And what says that we cannot develop apps to collect taxes and that the payment system shouldn't be mobile money, for example? In the own kind of line of work that I do, I would estimate that our tax intake can increase by several billions of cedis and probably a couple of billions of dollars if we manage to be astute in terms of that. So that's one in there. So it must not, people mustn't hassle to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes anyway already. Why do I hassle to pay the tax? But the second thing is changing the national narrative about the tax and spend conversation. At the moment, most people would not want to pay taxes because they do not believe that it is used properly. And that is either perception or reality or both. If it is reality that the money is either being wasted or there's corruption attached to government, that should stop. It's as simple as that. But if it is perception, or the part of it that is perception, is cured by communication and demonstrating things that happen. And in that case, in that sense, I think that a whole host of responsibility lies with politicians across the board. Now, when I sit outside in Oxford or in Nottingham, and I hear about Ghana being a corrupt place and country, and people are bandying things around without necessarily providing facts. Number one, what you're doing is breaking the social compact between the government and the people. If there's corruption, that's okay. You got to make it people aware of that. If there's no corruption, or you are just banding things around, then you're hurting that thing. So people might not be willing to pay taxes. But the second thing is also it affects the impact, the image externally for us, and affects people's perception of the ease of doing business in Ghana. So it affects FDIs. So I say to politicians and others in civil society, whether they are neutral or politically attached, before you make a claim on corruption, make sure you know what you're standing on. And that helps, because if you make sure you know what you're standing on, then we can pursue the issue and make sure that we stop it. If you don't know what you're standing on, please, you're hurting the country. 3 ways, as I said. One, there are people's personal integrity at stake. 2, there is breaking my willingness. Why would I pay taxes if I think somebody is stealing the money? And 3, the perception externally in terms of ease of doing business.
So I want us to shift the conversation to the dividend, because one of the key things that government wanted to do in order to get some revenue was either to collateralize our minerals in order to get some revenue coming for it. And one of the conversations was with China, giving us about $2 billion, which, well, we're not too sure where that conversation is now. And then, of course, the conversation relating to Ejapa. What was wrong with these 2 deals?
I'm not sure there's... okay, so let me answer it from a technical perspective first of all. People collateralize their earnings all the time. So think about you having a pension. Okay, you can choose to take your pension every month after you retire, or you can choose to take your pension in a bulk sum, and you can choose to take your pension as a mixture, a bulk sum to start with, and then some annual earnings from that. A few things you need to think about when you're doing that. You need to make sure that the valuation is right. And the valuation depends on various kinds of assumptions. So for transparency's sake, make the assumptions known. And let's have a debate on that. That's number 1, the valuation. Let's have a debate on that. Number 2 then is, what alternative means are there to raise funds? And how do they compare with this? Let's have a conversation about that. So then you have a portfolio or a mix of funding, some Ejapa-like funding, some just going on the commercial market to borrow, and so on. So that is number 2 in terms of that. Number 3 is that within what development framework are you collateralizing these things? Because these things, we do projects sometimes in Ghana without placing them more securely in either an ideological framework or, if you like, a policy, broad macro policy framework. And we need to be able to do that. So let's say we say that we are going to go down the route of EJAPA. We need to be sure that we know what projects they are going to be funded with. And we've got to be able to articulate very clearly what the benefits to GDP would be for that.
Would you say then that it's been suspended for now? Should we bring it back for a conversation?
Well, I think we need conversations broadly on financing that takes into consideration things like EJAPA, things like borrowing money, etc. If we have not been able to kind of expand our tax base. But what I'm saying is this, that once you put it within a framework and you say, okay, we're going to use it, let's say, to fund real infrastructure. How much, by how much? I mean, what real infrastructure? How much is it going to lift up GDP, all things being equal? And then when we fund, we've got to come back and do an impact assessment to say, this is what is happening. You see, it is dangerous let's think about it, you and a pension. If you take all your pension money today, you don't do anything with it, that's your pension gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
But you can still take your pension money today and invest in it, build a factory, which would be more beneficial to you than if you are taking the same. Down. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the kind of conversation we should have. Insofar as, so I think, most people have not understood EJAPA, and some of the conversations that have taken place are really uninformed. This thing. But that's part of the suspicions and the banding of accusation back and forth. My understanding, limited understanding of the politics around EJAPA has been about conflict of interest of central players in government. Exactly. That should stop. It's just cure the conflict of interest. That's the easiest thing to do, and cure the conflict of interest in terms of that. The thing with China and the barter again comes with an issue of valuation and our position in terms of our negotiation position. We have to have astute negotiators sitting across the table doing that and making sure that we get the best for our deal.
Finally, technology. Okay. We cannot, in these times, really be a country where if you leave the shores of Accra, getting internet is almost like impossible. Internet cost is really high. If we really want to take advantage of everything that technology comes with as a country, what should we be doing when it comes to our current status?
I think, again, it's a matter of just investing in the technology backbone, the infrastructure that has to deal with that. And I think because people recognize what it is, it should be a combination of government investment, but also private sector investment in terms of that. Because as an organization, multimedia, for example, we will need to ensure that internet access is spread across the country, because a lot of what you do, a lot of your revenues are based on the extent to which things are used. The telcos want to make sure that is happening because a lot of their mobile money issues are dealt with there. The banks have an interest in that. So many other people have an interest in that. So that should be an impetus. So you don't have to wait for government, but it's helpful if government has a plan to do those things, and government provides, if you like, an overarching framework that people contribute to, and then it becomes something that we do. Of course, when you are doing things like that, there are a lot of people who are free riders. The nature of technology is that we have what we call the spillover effects. So as soon as you do it, people can come and ride on the back of that. And so you want to take care of that. But we have to find a way of investing, and it's both. I don't think the technology is the issue. I think it's the money to do that and the will to do that that is an issue.
And that's all for Dealer and Tiamo of Joy Business. That's how we end this edition of The Marketplace. My name is Charles Aiti. For more news, you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Enjoy the rest of our programs. Have a good afternoon.